Okay, everybody. I'm making this little video for those of you who weren't in class today. That would be Wednesday, April 7th. A good number were not, but I want to make sure you didn't miss some important information. And I know there's a variety of reasons. Some of you couldn't help it. Others of you perhaps didn't come because you didn't have your presentation prepared. That would be unfortunate because it's really important. If you possibly can come, to please come to class, even if you don't have an assignment ready. In any case, I wanted to tell you about, first of all, those of you who didn't have your presentation ready are hopefully still finalizing it. And you really need to, if you didn't get me your presentation idea already, you need to get that to me very soon, like long ago, actually. But anyway, and those of you who did and you're still trying to get the presentation together, you need to practice it. So although you could perhaps meet with me, probably not so much on Thursday, but perhaps on Friday when I have more time, especially in the morning, that's one option. But remember, you can also get in touch with the TAs about setting up personal practice times with them. And I wanted to remind you that, I'm going to share my screen now. I want to remind you that. Now, this is an old speech coaching memo, but I want to remind you the Mackenzie and Nate's email addresses and phone numbers. So you could text one of them and say, hey, can I please have a practice time Thursday or Friday, or maybe over the weekend if they don't mind doing it, and then meet with them. And you can still use the classroom if you wish. If you're going to meet with me on Friday, it's probably going to be come to my office and then meet in Ward 115, and then do your practice there. Okay, so there's that, right? So please get ready to do your presentation. We're going to do more. We're going to try to finish up presentations next class. The other thing was I handed out the next big presentation. Well, not the next big one. Our final big presentation, which is the persuasive presentation. And what I handed out was the persuasive policy presentation instructions, which you can find on Moodle. I'll look at briefly here. You should find on Moodle. I'll give you a handout next time. Also the topics, the idea of topics, and then of course I gave everybody the rubric also. You'll notice from the rubric that this is a little bit longer, a little bit more involved, a little more research we expect than even the informative one. So, as I explained in class, remember, there are three types of persuasive presentations, which I will review these again in some future class. Presentations on questions of fact, on questions of value, and questions of policy. So fact would be like in a courtroom where you're just trying to straighten out what the facts are, how you should interpret facts. We're not doing that. Values have to do with your principles, the things that you hold close to you that are really fundamental to you. Things that involve religion and faith, values and personal principles. And those, we're not going to do those kind of presentations either, because those things are really hard to change and so fundamental. And we shouldn't do those. That takes a lot more work. Instead, we're going to do policy. So changes in policy. It could be personal changes, personal things. If you remember, in fact, let me go to the this handout on topics. You have to have a topic by next class. So you're going to do a policy-based topic. So this could be things like individual policies, changes in individual behavior. For instance, the examples that I gave during a previous class were, for instance, trying to encourage people to take on a vegan lifestyle because why? Perhaps it was better for the planet. Okay. And then you would explain that the problem is, global warming, and we can solve it perhaps by eating less meat and other animal products, or using less animal products, and this is how this would work, and this is all my evidence, and so on. And you're trying to encourage an individual change in behavior, but they don't have to be individual changes. It could be like, I think that we need to have a better parking policy here on campus, and this is the problem. I have to identify the problem. Parking is a problem, and this is examples of why it is, and research that shows it, or evidence, or people I talk to, and then this is the solution, right? And this is how it's going to work, and it sounds to be better. And we have to have a new policy, college policy, to do this. Or it could be something for the city, a city could do, or it could be something that a state could do. And on and on. In fact, in class today, someone suggested, hey, could you do one about legalizing gambling? Well, that would be too broad, gambling in general. but maybe a particular kind of gambling isn't legal here that you think should be, and then you'd have to have evidence behind it. And then that your suggestion would be, change in policy would be a law to legalize this kind of gambling in this state, for instance. Yeah. So just to go over the topics, but before I do, just to say that you would find at the top of this instructions that due on Monday is your chosen topic. The general purpose now is to persuade. The specific purpose statement will simply say, and this is what you need to hand in on Moodle, it'll be a Moodle Dropbox, will say, to persuade my audience, what? That we should do this to solve this problem, right? And then your central thesis is going to detail those main ideas, right? In a central thesis. And so first of all, you don't have to label your SPS because it is supposed to be policy. There are 3 kinds of SPSs for persuasive presentations, and we're not doing value or facts. So you're doing policy, so you don't have to label it because it's supposed to be policy. You do have to label your CT. And honestly, we haven't written or looked at a lot of persuasive CTs. You can read about them in your textbook. They are there, and you can get some ideas there too. But you're going to have to still understand that this is a little new to you. So therefore, I'm going to be generous in my grading of these, and you can expect you may have to do some fine tuning later too, right? But in any case, you do need to label the CT. Either it's a problem solution, identify a problem, I have a solution. It's problem cause solution, identify a problem, this is what was caused it, and this is my solution. Or it's comparative advantage. It's here's a problem, here's 2 ways to solve it. This is why this one's better. I'm comparing 2 things, or 3, I suppose, and this is why this one is better. So that's the overall kind of structure. We're going to go over more structural stuff another time. So you have to have your topic. And as far as the requirements are, there's one really big requirement. It can have nothing to do with coronavirus. I don't want anything persuasion about masks or hand sanitizing or any of that stuff. We've had way too much coronavirus in our lives. We don't need it in our persuasive policy presentation. So please, nothing about coronavirus. I want you to find something concrete, something probably in your life, something involves, please read through this paragraph here about consider problems in homes, dorms, campus, traffic, things that are important to us, pets, relatives, families, health, sleep, music, babies, clothing. You could make these lists much longer, I'm sure. Problems that relate to environment, oceans, amusement parks, salons, gyms, so on. Maybe it's about persuading about how something has to change in a gym or some kind of a fitness thing, or it's about your pets, so on and so forth. So please look through that. And remember, you have to kind of focus it. It's not just enough to say, as the example here says, security, this is going to be about security in dorms. It's more specifically, there's going to have to be an SPS that says, for instance, about how to prevent certain kinds of thefts in dorms, if that was it. And then you'd have to have a way to do that. You have to have an answer, or you'd have to have the solution, right? It isn't just to talk about improving your pet health, but you'd probably talk about particularly about dogs and insect-borne diseases, for instance, or poisonings or something, and what should be done to prevent that. It's not enough to, it's too broad to talk about food on campus. You're going to talk about maybe some specific things you can do to improve nutrition on campus for you as an individual, or so on. And in any topic that you have, you can always focus it based on perhaps an age group that it affects. These things affect certain age groups more different than other age groups too. And then topics to avoid. Here's a longer list. So I don't want anything to do with popular common social movements or things that have been in the news a lot. I want you to try to look for concrete things in your lives, particularly, and also want to stay away from some topics that turn into more about values. All right, so that's where we're going to stay away from abortion, euthanasia, and so on. And there's a more general list. The list looks a little dated because Trump hasn't been in the news too much, but still, I don't want Trump in there. But presidential election, there could be political-based ones. Maybe something to do with elections. They could include presidential elections, I suppose. So please take a look at that list too. And again, these handouts are available on Moodle. And I will stop my sharing now and just say, that's the overall look at the handouts and be prepared to have submitted a topic. by next class in the Dropbox on Moodle. Questions, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Have a good weekend.